Okay, so I think we can get started. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for being here today, for attending our webinar on funding kids' education through real estate. My name is Jocelyn Nicholas. I am a realtor and I'm also a full-time real estate investor. My story is that I started investing in real estate about 7 years ago. My husband and I, at the time, we were just dating. We had some money that we wanted to put away for a rainy day, and we decided to buy a property in Toronto. Within 2 years, that property appreciated so much that we could refinance and buy another one in Kitchener. So when we did that, I think that was like a light bulb moment for us, and we realized that we can actually build worth through real estate. A few years after we got married and we had our first daughter, and we had a few options. We talked to the bank about putting money aside and waiting for our money to grow so that we can afford to pay for our kids' tuition. But having seen the success we had in real estate, we decided to just refinance our home at the time and buy a property for her. So we bought a property for our daughter in 2017. We bought it in Kitchener. And we just basically wanted to have this property that will sit there for 18 years. And by the time she's ready to go to university, we can sell it or we can refinance it to have a little bit of money to pay for her tuition. And that's what we did. We paid $350 in 2017. At the time, we thought we were paying a lot of money, but recently it appraised for $600, and that property is still there. We had another child in 2020, and we decided to buy him a property as well because we were seeing that we're being successful at what we're doing. We bought his property in 2020. We paid $550 for it. Comparable homes are currently selling for $700. So we've seen that for us, this model has worked, and that's basically why I was speaking to Matthew, and we decided to share this with other parents as well. If we're lucky to have any other kids down the road, I think that that's something that we'll definitely continue to do because obviously we've seen a return on investment almost immediately. Right now, we have properties in Niagara Falls, we have properties in Guelph, and we have properties in Kitchener. If I was to say one thing that is a superpower for me, I'll go back 1 second, is finding off-market properties, off-market investments, especially in today's market. I think that being able to find a property before it goes to market, you kind of have a little bit of an advantage because then you can negotiate with the seller without having the interruption of having other buyers on the table. So if anybody is looking to find properties, you can definitely get in touch and I'll be happy to help. So today I'm very excited to be hosting a webinar with Mathew Frederick. Mathew has been investing in real estate for the last 30 years and he specializes in multifamily, new developments, and mentorship. Currently, Mathew, as he was just telling us, he is building a 3-story triplex in Belize, and he's consulting with investors who are trying to do the same and take their businesses to the next level. So without further ado, please welcome Mathew Frederick.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And let's see if I can get the screen. Okay, show webcam. Are you able to turn the screen over to me?
Yes, we're working on it. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
Is my screen showing?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's start. Let's clear some of the things out of my way here. Let's see if I can pull some of these things off my screen so I can actually see the screen itself. Okay, so today I'm going to talk a bit about real estate, how it relates to education, and really it's about funding education. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about how people fund their education today. I'm going to show you a plan that has about 3 different methods that you can use to, I believe, do what you have to do to have your kids be able to get a fighting chance to get to the head of the line when it comes to being educated. So currently, how do people educate their kids? How do they fund education? So right now, people, well, number one, they save money up. They save it up in a can in the backyard, maybe in the bank. At sometimes the parent has to save money up. Sometimes the young adult saves money up too. that's a bit of a stretch in a sense that it's a bit of a sacrifice. I get that. And at some point when that young adult gets to college or university, sometimes university has a job there for them. So like a co-op program to help them pay for school. But again, parents generally have to save money up. The second system, I believe, is the best system, and I'm looking forward to using this with my daughter. She's 13 years old right now, and I've seen this with my nieces, my nephews, and my cousins to win scholarships. I think scholarships and bursaries from companies, from the government, from different sources is one of the best ways to actually fund your university, your college, or your technical school. So we'll get back to scholarships in a minute. The third way, obviously, is to go through government funding. In my day, it was called OSAP, and people can either go to OSAP and get a grant. Now, we were not able to get a grant. Some people can actually get a loan, and you don't have to pay the loan back until you actually finish school. And even if you have a bit of an issue paying it back, there's a little bit of help for you to help you, let's say, get those payments through. At the same time, you can always go to the bank and get a loan. So far, you can save money in a can, you can get scholarships, you can actually go to the government and get loans from the government. You can also use your tax-free savings account where you're going to put money in, which is not going to pay tax on it until you have to use it. And a very common system that people use, and I have this too, is an RESP. Now, a lot of folks are not accustomed to an RESP, not sure what that is. So what I'm going to do is I'll spend just one screen on that before I move on. So an RESP, it's a registered education savings plan. Pretty much allows you to put your money in and it just stays there until you actually use your money, but your money is not taxed. The good news is that money could be invested in stocks or bonds, well, bonds, GICs, mutual funds. At the same time, when you do take the money out for that young adult's education, that money is taxed at their rate, not your rate. There's usually a $50,000 limit to each program. And yes, you can have more than one program. And how does the government help? Well, the government can help and assist that program with the Canadian Education Grant. And that's roughly about, they put 20% on the first $2,500 per year that you put into your RESP. And that could mean over 17 years, $500, that's about $8,500. The second one is Canadian Learning Bond. And that's for if your income is not the greatest. And they might give you $500 and $100 a year for the next 17 years. When it comes to number 5, there is individual plans, and there's obviously what I think is the most common one, the family plan, which you're under 21 and blood-related relatives can actually invest in your RESP. In other words, if your uncle's giving you a gift, instead of giving you a gift, they can give you money. Just really quickly before I close off this little section, you have about 36 years to spend that money. If you don't use it, you can put it into your RRSP. But of course, you have to understand how much you can put into your RRSP per year. So that's what people tend to do when it comes to financing. Real estate, surprisingly, is not one of the biggest ways that people actually try to fund their education, which surprises me because it's the method that I use, and I've been seeing it working very well. Now, 83% of all Canadians plan to pay for post-secondary education. 90% are doing exactly what most people are doing. They're saving that money up, investing it until that young adult gets to university level or college or technical school. But here's the reality. Even though an RESP can hold $50,000 in its program, according to the Financial Post, most Canadians who have RESPs, they get about $28,500 by the time that young adult's ready. And if you start when the child is 2 years old or 3 years old, that $28,000 might be $22,000. The problem with that is if you go to university and you are going to university away, you have to pay for tuition, you got to pay for books, and you have to pay for your residence for the next 4 years. That can cost on average $96,000. So over 4 years, $96,000 does not really compare to $28,500. And even if you stay home and go to university, that's about $48,000 over 4 years. Somehow it's just not matching up. So that becomes a bit of a problem. And the problem obviously is because people don't contribute enough, and there are limits to how much you can put into your specific plan. Now, here's the solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give the solution from a 50,000-foot view. Then I'm going to go into why I think this is the right way to do it. Now, as I said before, most people are taught a way on how to plan for their future education for the young adult. They pretty much, when the child's born, they'll save up money, invest it until that person's born, until that person graduates grade 12, and that money then goes for university. I'm doing it totally differently. Instead of saving up and waiting, I'm actually going to put my daughter, in fact, I have put my daughter in private school from JK all the way to grade 6. The last couple of years, she's not been in private school, but I'm putting her back in from grade 9 to grade 12. The reason why I'm doing that is because I actually want her to win a scholarship. And if I buy a house to generate that income, let me show you what I mean. So I want to start her at JK all the way to grade 12 in private school. Then with the additional training she gets, I think she will get a scholarship. In fact, I've seen that with a lot of my cousins, my nieces, my nephews, and a lot of my friends. So that's the game plan. And how do we fund that private school? We fund it with real estate from day 1 all the way to grade 12. The good news is after grade 12, that property is still there. It still has great value. And even though you get the scholarship, you can still pay for education with the property also. And if you have an RESP, because people always ask me, should I do real estate? Should I do an RESP? Why not do both? Because ultimately that scholarship will help the RESP, and on top of it all, because you have that property, then you can leverage it. So in 2005, I bought a property in Hamilton. I bought one in Upper Ottawa for $150,000. Fennel, $150,000. Mohawk, $150,000. Upper Wentworth, $150,000, and also Lime Ridge, $150,000. And that was 2005. Those properties today have gone up to past $750,000. And they were cash flowing back then, and they're cash flowing today. So I've seen property over the last 15 years, not just double, but go up at least 3 times in value. And obviously the mortgage gets paid down. So before I move on, I'm going to prove the point that private school is the way to go, as opposed to putting your kid through the normal school system and then going into a university. Just to repeat myself, it's pretty much get your real estate to pay for private school, let them win scholarships, and then from there, use the property to pay for school. And I'll show you 3 systems in a moment. Okay, so private school, why do I like this so much? Now, obviously I don't work for a private school, but I like the concept because from 2007 till now, 1/5 of the people out there, I mean, private school has grown by 1/5. And in fact, there's 1,345 private schools today with 138,000 students enrolled. The bottom line is these students are starting the race 20 feet ahead, that race to the finish line to get that scholarship or to get into university, 20 feet ahead. And that's something that I believe we should really focus on for our kids. At the same time, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Quebec actually fund private schooling. Ontario does not. So we almost have a bit of an unfair start off when we are putting our kids in school. Now, who actually is using private school right now? Which person, which parent is actually doing this? Well, most likely they're self-employed. In a lot of cases, they're entrepreneurs. And people who are self-employed and entrepreneurs, they know something. The existing school system today, although they tried very hard, is still based on manufacturing. And the people who make the most money in today's society are people who solve problems, really critical thinkers, people who have a higher education level. At the same time, they're in a higher status. They tend to think private school is the way to go. And sometimes for religious reasons, you may want your child to be in a specific school. Now, why do parents actually choose private school? So I talked about who chooses private school. Why would they choose private school? Well, the number 1 reason is safety, which surprised me when I looked into this. But I remember when I was growing up in my day, and I grew up in the 70s, when we got into fights, I had, let's call it a beef with somebody, a fight or a beef. Kids would gather around and just say beef, beef, beef. And then you would fight that person one-on-one. And that one-on-one fight, after you fought the person, you might win, you might have drawn, but all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, that's your best friend. Today, kids tend to just jump on other kids. So you have one kid, 10 kids jump on them. And that's something that really has caused me a bit of concern with what I've seen in some of the existing schools today. And I see other parents have that feeling as well. And ultimately, kids sometimes have jealousies and they take it out on other kids. Obviously, I like the fact that a private school has they nurture and they support, almost like good soil. I like the fact that they focus on critical thinking and also it's independent, thinking independently, which really helps me to solve my problems today. And even though I'm a real estate investor and I do residential, I do commercial, and I build and develop, one of my greatest assets is that people call me when they have problems to solve, and I solve those problems. That's how I make money as a real estate investor, not just from the real estate, but solving problems. Also, an emphasis on character. People don't think much about character anymore, but I think character is critical. For me personally, I always look at myself. Who am I January 1st? And I ask myself December 31st, am I a better me? And if I'm not a better me, I hold myself to that standard because it's important to always be a better self by the end of the year. And character is part of that. I like the fact that the curriculum is true and a curriculum that is actually active and relates to this world today. And of course, they have outstanding teachers. Now, there are outstanding teachers in private schools, and there are outstanding teachers in public schools. Both. It's just that some teachers have more tools than others, and some teachers have a different curriculum than others. And of course, that can hamstring certain people. Now, what is the advantage for your child in private school? So we just talked about the advantage for the parent. Let's talk a bit about the advantage for the child. Smaller class size. In private school, you have 12 people as opposed to 30. It's a big difference. And teachers work very hard, but they are teaching a segregated instruction system, which sort of slows them down because they can't move as fast as they want to move. They have to deliver the curriculum at a certain speed and a certain pace. Also, I like the fact that in private school, there's individual attention. And the reason why I'm speaking about private school so much is I believe that your money right now from real estate should go into your kids today, from JK all the way to grade 12. I believe that that's where your money should be spent because that's where they're going to get their best dollar. And I say that to you because for 10 years, I taught college. So I was a college teacher. And I can tell who did great in grade 1, grade 3, grade 5, grade 7, grade 9, and grade 11. I knew who did good in those grades, and I knew who did not. And I can see it from the workload and the quality of work and the ability to communicate from the students that I saw. And when I got them, I got them at 21 to about 35 years old. And you can see the difference. So I really think it's important not to just wait until they get to a certain stage and try to give them greatness all the way up. Because you want them to have the competitive edge. You want them to have that, go to that school, which has a bit of weight behind the name. And of course, you want a school to focus more on high academic performance. And that's very important to me. So it's a very academic focus. At the same time, technology. Very few people, even kids, like grade 9. In fact, when I was in grade 9, I couldn't wait to be in grade 10, 11, and 12. And I don't think there's any grade 10, 11, or 12s who actually want to go back to grade 9. But I just went through a private school with my daughter, the one she'll be going to in September. And after going through, looking at the science classes, looking at the media classes, I think I want to be in grade 9 again. I mean, I'm saying to myself, I actually want to go to school again. So it's a big difference. Better funded. And at the same time, the networking is great. You get to meet and have alumni from the time you're young all the way up to grade 12. Now, so I've talked about private school, but now let's switch to real estate. Why do I like real estate as a reason or a system to actually invest in, to actually pay for my education for my daughter? Well, because I have direct control over the investment. I don't have a problem investing in the stock market. I just don't have control over that. I like to be able to choose the type of property that I'm buying. I like to choose the area, the terms, when to sell it or refinance it. I want that say. I also want to have positive cash flow because I can do a few things with that cash flow. If I'm looking to maybe not put my kid in private school until, let's say, until university, then I can take the cash flow and put it back into the actual mortgage to pay down the mortgage. Or if I'm paying for private school, I'm going to use that cash flow. I like the fact that it builds up equity as time goes on. And I also like the fact that it appreciates. And as Jocelyn mentioned and I mentioned, properties that I bought 15 years ago have actually gone up 5 times, which is crazy. In fact, even in Hamilton, Ontario, last year, January, house prices were about $600,000 on average. And today they're probably $780,000. And that's a huge jump in a terrible year. I like the fact that if I were to borrow against a house to buy another house, because maybe that's what I required in order to fund that private school, then I can write off the interest on that investment. I like the fact that I get a break when I actually sell the house. Now, when I say a break, I'm talking about capital gains. I'm just saying you don't pay 100%, you pay obviously a percentage. In other words, capital gains is 50% of your profit, not 100% of your profit, not 50% against your tax rate. I like the fact that if I buy a house today and I fix it up, put some money into it, and I have the right tenants, I know that within about a year or two, it should be positive cash flow, and I'm able to actually begin to use it now, as opposed to putting my money into some sort of RESP and waiting all those years and then taking the money out after. Of course, as you use the money, it is taxable. I like the fact that real estate's not volatile. In fact, if you were to look at the S&P 500 over the last 15, 20 years, real estate has just eked it out. And I like that real estate stays in vogue, meaning it's not going to go out of style. It's a long-term thing that people need it. It's tangible, so I can touch it. I can read it. I can see how it's actually working. In case at night I'm concerned, how's my real estate? I can jump in my car. I can drive to it. I can rub it. I can touch it. Oh, you're still here. I can see exactly what's going on with it because I'm a simple man just going through the universe. And I like the fact that it's impervious to technology. Technology will not be an issue. So I've talked a bit about the good parts of real estate. And before I get into the plan that I'm thinking of to share with you, let me talk about the bad stuff, because there's bad stuff too. And especially when people are trying to use real estate to actually build funds for their youngsters' education. Number one, they consider it a passive thing. Just because the government calls cash flow passive income doesn't mean real estate is passive. So they buy a property and all of a sudden they do it wrong. They don't have the right team. They make a lot of mistakes. And now they have 2 jobs. They have their full-time job and they have this property with horrible tenants. And they're like, what's going on here? I thought this was passive. That can be solved just by having the right team members to help you find that property and structure it. But that's a problem that a lot of people go into when they think real estate can just solve their problems for them. Number 2, poor negotiation. See, most people buy properties that are on the market, and therefore they have to fight competition. They have to deal with a hot market, and they have to deal with low inventory. And at the same time, they have to deal with an auction mentality. Every single property I found last year for my students were, and I focused on multifamily last year, we did 14 properties, all were off market. And to people who did not even want to sell, were not even thinking of selling, and we approached them and had a conversation with them. And that could be done for houses too. So with the right realtor who understands how to do that, or the right investor, or the right investment realtor, then helping you to find those houses off market means you don't have to worry about the competition. And that's very, very important, because every single time you see a property today, the values are crazy by the time you actually get your offer in. Now, wrong area. You've got to be able to know where to buy that property. Is the GDP going up? Is there net migration, meaning more people coming than going? Is it a town where students come, go to school, and then leave? Or do they stay? Again, is the inventory high? When I say inventory, I mean if you stop putting any property on the market and all of a sudden, with no properties on the market, if it takes 1 month to sell everything, then that's a pretty hot market. If it takes 3 months to sell, that's still good. But if it takes 4 to 6 months to sell, then your market is slowing down. 6 to, let's say 7 to 9 months, it's pretty much a dying market. And 9+, it's a dead market. So in Alberta, for a number of years, I think the inventory must have been about 9 months, because my houses in Edmonton were just not moving. In Ontario, I would say they're 1 month to 2 months inventory, so it's still pretty hot. And not just the whole city, find the great points in the city. Next point is tenant issues. That's a big problem. But again, the same team that will help you to find that property in the right area will be the same team that will help you to put together the correct property management to find the better tenant. And of course, if you were to end up years later realizing that, hey, maybe the house didn't go up enough and maybe the interest rates are too high, we can't control interest rates, but we can control the quality of that property going up. If you do number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 very well, then you definitely will have a higher price in the future. And I've been investing for 30 years and I've seen that. Now, so let's get into what we have to do to figure out which real estate, which process is going to be the right one for you. Step number 1, we have to figure out what type of education do you need. Now, are you looking to fund JK to grade 8 privately? And if that's the case, that can cost you $7,000 per year. Now, I know some people will say they pay 3 times that. I'm just saying on average, that's $583 a month. And of course, that's $64,000 over the next 9 years. I would look for a property that can do that. And there's a certain kind of property that can do that. And if that can give your young adult or your child a fighting chance to start 20 feet ahead, then I think it's worth looking into that. Number 2, maybe you want to focus on high school. That's about $16,000 a year in private school, or $1,334 a month. It's still about $64,000 over 4 years as opposed to 9 years. The combination of these two, I think, will allow your young adult to get scholarships. When they go to university, 4 years of university at $24,000 per year, in the end, we have to ask ourselves, are they going away or are they staying home? Because going away could be 96, staying home could be 48. Ultimately, it's $2,000 a month, and if not university, maybe they go into college or technical school, then that is their choice. So right now, take a moment to say, where are your kids? And where they are right now depends on how much effort you have to put in steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, let's take a look at this in a larger spectrum. Now, if you have 1 child, 64. If you have 2 children going to private school, yeah, they might cut it in half for you. High school is still the same amount for the first child, but they may cut it in half for the second. And university and college would be the same, whether you have 1, 2, or 3 children going through school. So think about right now how many kids you have, and if you were to put them through private school JK to grade 12, see if that is something that you might want to talk about, how to find the right properties to make that happen. Now, I will tell you a story. So my daughter started private school from JK all the way to grade 6. And her mom's mom, her grandmother, used to drive her to school. And she went to school in a town right beside our town, our city. But her grandma's got dementia. And for grade 7 and 8, she couldn't drive her. So I put her into the public system. And although those teachers work super hard, super large classes, I'm actually seeing my daughter idle, having to actually teach the class or help out the teacher teach the class. And I'm feeling as though the last 2 years were literally almost wasted years. I literally had to spend a lot of time myself with my daughter, taking her to grade 9 and 10 level when she's in grade 7 and grade 8, because I don't know much about grade 7 and grade 8. And ultimately, I didn't want her to continue in that system for grade 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's why I'm putting her back into private school, because I think it makes a difference. Now, life to me, I've always say it's like a football game. You have 4 quarters, and we have to figure what quarter you're in. If you're in the first quarter, which means you have an unborn child, then you're in a good position to buy something now, even 2 years before your first child, and modify it, renovate it, get it working. And by the time your first child's here, you can actually begin to take profits from it all the way up until the time they have to go to university. And because they would have gone up 3 times and the mortgage would have gone down, that property can be used for university. If you're in the second quarter, like a football game, you know, halftime's coming up. And halftime is more fun if you're doing pretty good in first quarter and second quarter. If you're not doing pretty good in first and second quarter, you can't watch the halftime show because you're scared about the third quarter. So if you're in first and second, I think you should act, but at least you're in a better position. If you're in third quarter, 4 years away for your young adult to need education funding, then you know what? Okay, you have to really take a bit more risk. And the fourth quarter, you may have to do something bigger with a couple of people to buy a bigger investment opportunity that will generate more money. So where you are really depends on what your next step is going to be. So what quarter are you in when it comes to your kids for getting them to the point where you want education to be funded? And of course, as I just said, if you're in the first quarter, intensity, which is how much money you put out, and the risk level that you're about to take is very low. And as time goes on, if you're in the fourth quarter, it's time to really make a difference, make a change, and actually do something about it so that you're not running into the wall and having to, have your kids do extra effort, the things that you wish that you can actually help them go through. So step number 5. This is going to be the 3 systems that I'm going to talk about. And I know these systems personally. I've seen these systems work, and I want to share them with you. So number 1, I'll talk about triplexes or triplex conversion. And if you're in the Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo area, amazing things are happening with the bylaw. And in different cities, amazing things are happening with bylaw. And I'll talk to you about it in a minute. Or it might be a duplex with a coach house, which again, it's 3 units. Or it might be a 10 to 12 unit building, which is much larger. And I'll go through each one of these with you right now. So the first one, the trifest conversion. Now, everybody talks about buy a house and do a basement suite. And that's good, but it's not good enough to pay for education. You need a bit more cash flow to pay for education. And the good news is, in some cities now, they're allowing a house to go to not just 2 units, but to 3 units. And I'll show you an example of Kitchener in a moment. And therefore, this house here is one of the first houses I bought. Now, I've sold this a long time ago, but this is a conversion where I bought a Victorian home and I created a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom bachelor apartment as a triplex, but sufficient income came in so that I was able to have a good cash flow to make a difference in my life, but also in the lives of the people that I care about. This is another triplex that's a conversion as well. This is an end unit triplex. So sometimes if you see a row of townhouses and there's an end unit townhouse, that's possible also, but this is only possible because there's a front door, a side door, and there's a back door going downstairs. So the basement had a unit, a 2-bedroom in the basement, 2-bedroom on the main floor and second, and then up in the roof, actually, you know what? Yes, that's right. There's a bachelor up top. And ultimately, that worked really well. Now, I prefer what's called a purpose-built property, meaning not one that was chopped up, one that was built as a triplex. And here's an example of a purpose-built property. Now, Inspire Homes, I don't know them very well, but everybody has a crush on somebody, and I have a crush on them. I've been looking at their designs. I've been looking at how they build and renovate. I just love what they do. And this is a great example of them grabbing a property and fixing it up, a beautiful triplex that commands high rents. So I love what they do there. What I want to do now is just show you some numbers. Now, some of you will say, well, these are pretty high numbers. Well, these numbers come from Kitchener Rents, Zumper. I've just taken the maximum number, so you can always go down from here. So where it says 3-bedroom, 2,100, maybe a 3-bedroom might be 1,800 or 1,900. But either way, I'm grabbing the max numbers and we can work backwards. But with a 3-unit property, whether it's an old Victorian home, whether it's purpose-built, if you're bringing in 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 5,350, then that's annually $64,000. If you take away the TMI, taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, if you take away the $27,000 for debt service, and by the way, this property is not managed at this state, then your cash flow is $17,000. With $17,000 cash flow, that can at least cover the $7,000 a year that you want to take your kids from JK to grade 8, and also from grade 9 to grade 12, that's $16,000. even if these numbers are super high and you subtracted the 17 down to 10,000, that's still reasonable to get you going somewhere. And don't forget there's appreciation. Let's say 10%. I've always used 5% for appreciation. I still use it today, but I've been seeing crazy numbers for the last 8 years, 17%. And there's also mortgage pay down. So keep in mind that real estate pays 3 ways. So that's one path to go. And if you want to speak about a specific property that you see that you like, you give me a call. I'll talk to Jocelyn. We'll go and talk to that owner and see if we can get them to sell that property. And mathematically, we'll look at it and see if that property actually makes sense before we go any further. But I like the 3 units because it makes sense. The second plan is what I'm very excited about. It's a coach house. Now here's an example of a house. This is just a house, and it's a 4-unit, 5-unit, but if it's a 2-unit, but it has some room at the back. So this is the house right here. It's got some room at the back. It doesn't have to have an entrance. It could have an entrance from this side where the red car is. You can build a coach house. And if you're in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo area, you can actually build a coach house now, or at least the bylaw has changed and it's ready to launch. People will say, well, what does a coach house cost? Well, roughly it's about $200 a square foot, and it's about 500 square feet. So on average, it's around $100,000, give or take a number of things you have to do. There's fees and servicing and a bunch of other things, right? I like these coach houses. Now, this company called Limestone Trail Company, Inc., I don't know them that well, but I've been following them as well. I love their designs, and it's a company that I plan to do a lot of business with. And it could be also a carriage house. People say a coach house, carriage house sounds the same. I think a carriage house has a garage that stays a garage, and then you enter from the back. There's living behind the garage, and there's living above it. But again, people refer to them as the same thing. Now, what can happen here? Well, if I can take the house that exists and turn it into an up and down, a 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom, then I can get the detached house to bring in 1,900, more or less. If I can receive this range from $5,000 to $5,900, $70,000 a year, same expenses. Now keep in mind that your taxes will go up because you have 2 properties, and your insurance will go up because you have 2 properties, 2 separate detached properties, and your debt service will go up because again, you have 2 properties. You're still making some cash flow. And if this is too high for the area, then you can subtract some from there, and it still ends up helping you pay for the actual school all the way up to university. Or if you're not putting your kid through private school, all the cash flow goes into the mortgage to pay it down. Obviously, there's a window at the end of the year that you can actually pay down your mortgage. Every mortgage has a limit to that window, but you want to apply your cash flow to that. Now, that bylaw I talked about in Kitchener was section 4.122. It just says here, 2 additional dwelling units attached may be permitted in association with a single detached dwelling in accordance with regulations. And if you do a single detached dwelling, a few things you have to respect. I'm a builder. I've built over 240 houses. I've built infill houses. I've built lots side by side. I've built 113 house subdivision. I've built 35 house subdivisions. So I understand the process, and I have a team of people who can actually look at the property that you think you like. And again, that's where you call Jocelyn. She'll call me. If you see a property that you like, show us the property. We'll go talk to the owners and see if they want to buy it, because if they have some extra land behind, then that's a property that could be a property for a coach house. Of course, we have to check the zoning, and we have people who will check the zoning to see if that's possible. And zoning has a bunch of regulations. I won't go through them with you right now. And what the city will require is something called site plan control. So, the design of the property and the levels, all the services to the property, parking, access to the property, stormwater management, landscaping, tree preservation, and what are the amenities to the area. I hope you're beginning to hear what I'm saying, that if you see a property you want, don't worry about if someone wants to sell it or not. You call Jocelyn, you call me, we will together go and talk to the owner and see if they want to sell that property. You just have to find the great property. Plan 3. Now, this is if you're closer to that quarter. You're in 4th quarter and you need more money. I think you have to jump to the commercial world, where we're looking at maybe a 12-unit building. And you might say, well, I can buy a house for 600,000, but I can't buy a building for 2.4 million. And that might be true, but these buildings make enough money sometimes to bring 3 people in. You could bring in a parent, a grandparent, and yourself. You could bring in a brother or sister, or even complete strangers coming in to buy one building because it's sufficient enough to take care of everyone's child. And if you can buy a building, now you have 3 children taken care of. Okay, I like the plaza, of course. People are more accustomed to the buildings because it's the apartments. I love plazas because, well, I don't have to worry about the landlord board. If you don't pay your rent, I can lock you out in 15 days. Not that I want to do that. Of course, you have to be mindful of what businesses are in these plazas today because they have to be pandemic-proof, they have to be recession-proof businesses, and once that just can't open up shop somewhere in a different country. And if you do that right, you'll find that these make a lot more money and they cover all the expenses. Easier to manage, by the way. And if a multifamily and a plaza had a child, it'd be a mixed use. So 4 apartments and 4 stores, the best of both worlds. So any of these combinations would be nice to generate a certain amount of money that you need for that university or for private school up until university. Example, 2 bedrooms, they're $1,400 each, times 8, it's $11,000. 1 bedroom at $1,100 times 4, it's $4,400. It's about $15,000 a month. When you consider it's about $187,000 a year, you take away the taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, and the property management. These get managed, so you don't have to answer the phone call at 2 a.m. Then you consider the mortgage itself, you're looking at about $43,000 cash flow a year. And if private school is $7,000 a year from grade 9, from JK to grade 8, and $16,000 from grade 9 to grade 12, that can take care of that divided by 2 or 3, because you may have 2 or 3 partners coming in. And then that property has increased in enough value so that once they hit university, you can borrow against it, or you can sell it, pay the tax, and now you have money to put them through school. So it's 3 systems that I believe it's worth a conversation. Of course, we're doing a short little talk today, but I definitely think it's worth the call. Now, if you are looking to buy real estate for education, here's a few things you have to remember. Number 1, it's got to be in a growth area. Net migration means more people coming than leaving. It's got to be off market. Again, realtors can get pocket deals, or investors can get pocket deals, deals that are not on the market, because the competition just makes it too difficult to buy at a really good price. Number 3, we have to structure the deal based on what you need. Do you need that money in 12 years, 18 years? Do you need it in 2 or 4 years? That's going to depend. That will tell us exactly what type of property you should be buying. At the same time, you have to make cash flow, or else you don't buy it. And that cash flow can be applied towards the principal or applied towards private school. The rate or the term, people always ask me, should it be a long term or short term? It all depends. Are you looking to refinance the property and pull some money out? If you are, variable mortgage. If you're good to go for the next 10 years, then you could lock into a term mortgage. In fact, I just locked in a mortgage with Tangerine Bank for 2.14% actually on a 10-year term for a certain property that I know I'm not going to do anything with for the next 10 years. And you get 3 houses, do you get a building, which way you go? That's going to have to be a conversation with Jocelyn or myself. And of course, we have the team that can help manage that property for you so it's more hands-off. Now, success obviously depends on a system. So just in closing, systems are very, very important. And I heard this story maybe about 20 years ago. I've been saying it for about a year, and I actually heard it on the radio about 2 years ago. But it goes this way. Who's going to win a race? 10-year-old girl or last year's Tour de France winner? Well, if he's got a tricycle and she's got a bicycle, she's going to win every single time. See, it doesn't matter that he's spectacular. It doesn't matter that he's a winner. The better system always wins. And Jocelyn and I have sat down and put together a system that we believe will take you to the next level and cause you to reduce, let's say, money out of your pocket, reduce stress, reduce time, and reduce effort. And if we can help you reduce money, stress, time, and effort, then that's a good system. And therefore, it will help you make up any lost time if you're getting too close to the 3rd or 4th quarter, Or if you want to, because you're in the first quarter, want to set the foundation so you can relax or coast for the next 4 quarters, we can help you with that as well. So here's our system. We have a team that helps you study the area. We study the area and we help people get off-market deals. And then we do the due diligence with them so that we understand what's good or bad about the property. Hey, can you build something? Can it be converted to a triplex? Can you convert it to a duplex? What's going on with this property? That's where our expertise comes in, and we know exactly what you can do to a property. Secondly, we have associates who are great at financing. I have mortgage brokers that I know. I also have private lenders that will fund properties if you're having a hard time making up, let's say, some bridge financing or getting qualified. And we have great accountants that we know that can sit down with you and plan out your next 18 years to make sure that whatever you do, you're doing it right. Now, I always say you should have more than one thing. So it's okay to have your RESP. It's okay to have real estate. It's okay to have a number of things on your table, but you should have an accountant or a financial planner sit with you and let you use those things or help you to put those things in the right order. Next is a contractor team. So we have electricians and plumbers, HVAC people, roofers, people of all trades, and also general contractors, fix-it-all people who will, if you do buy a house in an area, that team will fix that house for you or will show up and solve problems. Of course, you have to pay them, but if we do our due diligence right, we can catch the problems ahead of time, and therefore that team is not to be used every day, but at least they're there for you to help you to solve the problems that may pop up when it comes to real estate. And also, we know some good property managers in the area who've been managing for many, many years, and they'll deal with tenant issues, they'll deal with repair issues, so that you're not turning this into a full-time job ×2. And then, of course, we have all the development aspect of it, where I have somebody who does great drawings on properties. I have somebody who will investigate with the city exactly if that's the right thing you can build there, what's the highest, best use, what can you do with that property. At the same time, they can look and see what it'll cost you to rent something. And of course, they'll see if they can build, or you can build a coach house and what it would cost to do that. So because we have that team, that gives you that bicycle as opposed to the tricycle, then I think it's a good step forward for you to give us a call and sit back and we'll talk to you about that. Now, ultimately, again, just so that I respect teachers out there in non-private schools, the class sizes are increasing. And because of the segregated instruction, it really slows down the pace at which the curriculum can be delivered. And teachers try extremely hard to do their best in private and public school, both equally. They both try hard. And of course, funding for private school is a lot greater than public school. And sometimes if there's 30 students in a class, only 1 or 2 of the most severe students who require special attention can get that attention. But in private school, most of them can. But again, I want to just take a moment to say this so that I'm respecting all teachers. I'm not saying it's their fault. They're working with a system that is not really designed to make life that easy for them. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to take a moment and just jot down my number. And what I'll do a 30-minute free consultation with you if you want to talk about, okay, here's where I am. I want to get to the next level. What should I do? You can reach me at 289-440-2335. That's my personal number. I don't usually give it out too much, and that's my cell phone. So text me, and then I'll give you a call. There's my email, and then take a moment to write down Jocelyn's information as well, 289-244-9896, Jocelyn at cbn.on.ca. Give her a text. She'll contact you in the next day or two to see exactly what your needs are. And let's see if we can help you guys move to the next level. And what I'm going to do is switch back to Jocelyn. So stop sharing. And Jocelyn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That was very informative. Every time I listen to you, I feel like I learned something new. So thank you very much for giving that presentation. So now if anyone, thank you. If anyone has a question, please post them in the chat box and I will be asking Matthew. You can also just unmute and ask the question and Matthew will be happy to answer. So Matthew, while we wait for people to start asking questions, I'll just ask you some of the questions that I get the most with people who are looking to invest in real estate. So the first question is, what are your top 3 favorite cities to invest in Ontario?
I like Barrie, I like Cambridge, I like Kitchener. So those would be my top 3.
Awesome.
I like Barrie because it's affordable and it seems to be always going up. I like Kitchener because when people go to Kitchener, young people, they stay. There is a place for them to stay. So brains are not just going in and leaving. And I like Cambridge because I believe it's on its way up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think of Hamilton? I'm just going to ask because.
Okay, so I grew up in Hamilton and I started investing in 1992 in Hamilton. I'm the first guy in Ontario to bring a city bus through Hamilton with about 30 or 40 students back in 1996. And with all those one-way streets, it was crazy. So no, I started in Hamilton. And obviously it's a great place to invest. It's hard for me mentally because stuff I was buying for $100,000 today is $780,000 or $150. It's worth $780. Kind of hard for me to actually look at the value and think it actually makes sense. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Barton Street is like 3 times what I think it's worth, but people are paying for it. So yeah, I think it's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that what I like about Hamilton is if you're looking to do burrs, like buy, refinance, repeat, I think Hamilton has a lot of old homes and you're able to do that easier, I guess, than it would in newer cities because Hamilton's been around for some time. So another quick question that I get a lot is, what are some of the things that you look for in a city that you want to invest? I think you touched on that, but could you just maybe like recap again the top 3 things that you look for in a city that you want to invest in?
Okay, first of all, I want GDP going up. So I check out last year's GDP and the last, let's say, 4 years gross domestic product. I also want net migration, more people coming than going, and at a higher percentage. Instead of 3%, maybe I want 6%. And you can check, you can check the census from Canada census to see exactly what's been happening. I also like if they have circles around them. So when I say a circle, I mean a circle highway. Hamilton has the QEW, it's got the Red Hill, it's got the Link, it's got the 403.
Yeah.
That's a measure for success. If you go to Edmonton, it's got the Anthony Henday circling it. If you go to Saskatoon, it has Idlewild or Circle Drive circling it. Toronto technically has Don Valley, 427, 40, I guess it's 401, and it has the QEW, I believe. So if you have 4 highways circling your city, that's always a really good thing. It's a great place for business and head offices. And also, if the inventory is 1 to 3 months, I'm good with that. Vacancy rate 2%, and it has a place for students to always stay. And it's got to have some history about it, some reason why people should be there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just got a question here in my inbox, and it says, "I am a first-time real estate investor. What type of property should I start with? Should I start with pre-construction? Should I do resale properties, or should I do commercial for a first-time real estate investor?"
Okay, so 2 things you have to consider. Number 1, what is your need? Okay, so what is your need and what is your limitation? When you say commercial, can you actually get into commercial? So if your need is commercial but you can't get into it, then you're going to have to do something that moves you towards it. So again, it really depends on what you need your money for, how soon you need it, and do you actually need cash flow, or do you need equity buildup, or do you need appreciation? And that will be a conversation I'll have with you one-on-one to get a better understanding of what your needs are. So real estate is needs driven as opposed to somebody else's choice.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a question here on Instagram because we're also live on social media. The question is there an ideal holding period for real estate properties?
I think probably 6 years. And it depends on what kind of property it is. If it's a commercial building, sometimes you need 2 years to stabilize it then you need another year to have now 3 years of cool runnings, and then you might even refinance it there, but you need 2 more years to actually begin to feel the benefit, and then the 6th year to then really get the benefit. For houses, I believe it's around 5 years minimum. You really want to get that benefit over a 5-year period. Now, I've made most of my money by keeping houses for 15 years. And I have some properties I call donkeys. They're ugly properties. And some of my donkeys are now like Arabian horses. I mean, they're beautiful. So
yeah,
the longer you keep it, the better off you are. But remember, if it's falling apart on you and you can't do anything to sustain it, and it's taking away half your life because you're so busy with it, sometimes you let that one go and then you try to keep something else. So I'd say 5 years for houses, 6 years for buildings, 15 years to build wealth.
absolutely, absolutely. So I think you also touched on this one. Another question is, so in your experience, are you saying that mixed-use properties are easier to cash flow?
I think the best property to cash flow that I have is self-storage. You know, those ugly self-storage units, because you don't have a fridge or stove or a washer, dryer, kids or pets. So those make me the most money. Then strip plazas, because somebody comes in and they have to furnish the entire plaza, the entire unit, and they have to do all the leasehold improvements to the unit, and then they got to cover all my expenses. If my expenses go up, then they have to pay more. And then mixed use is more safe, because if all you have is plaza, people don't always need a place to work, but they need a place to live. So the mixed use is the safest, where you have apartments and you have actually the advantage of properties. And then multifamily, again, it's a heavier management. But I think plazas and mixed use is probably the best.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, I feel the same way as well. So there's another question here. It says, could you clarify on the bylaw changes that you mentioned in Kitchen? I think Guelph has the same bylaw changes, because I've been talking to the CEO of Guelph about this. They're actually updating their bylaws, but could you clarify on what that is?
Yeah, so it just means that in the past, most houses, you might be able to have 1 unit in the house or maybe a basement apartment, but now they're aiming for 3 units in one property, because they want to increase the density. They want to quietly increase density, which means instead of having just your house and your basement apartment, if it's possible, you have 3 separate tenants in that one house, or let's say 2 tenants in the house and a coach house, or a coach house in the back. It's almost like allowing 3 units and maybe even 4 units. And a lot of people think, why don't people just build out in empty spaces? I mean, there's a farm, why don't I just build out there in the field? Well, the city does not want you to build that far out, because now they have to put in fire, police, ambulance, schools. It's just too expensive. They want you to go up. And therefore, that's what the city of Kitchener is trying to do now. They want to quietly allow you to be able to put 3 units in a property. But then at the same time, you have to be careful. Like if I'm building a coach house, I can't put a patio on top of that coach house for people to party on top of that coach house in the backyard. So there's a lot of rules to go with that as well.
Absolutely. Yes, that's all the questions I have. If anyone has a question, they can also reach out. And I think that we've been here for about 45 minutes now or longer. So thank you very much, Matthew, for coming on. And thank you everyone who has attended this webinar. This has been very informative for me as well, as I'm learning and growing every day. If anyone would like to get in touch with us, you have our contact information. I believe that our team will probably be sending out the recording, because we recorded the webinar. If anybody wants to see the slides as well, we have all that content and we're happy to send it out. So please stay in touch, and thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. As I said, every time I listen to you, I learn something new.
Well, you know what? I'm always learning, always trying to improve. And there are a lot of people that I learn from also, so it's a big circle.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, have a good night. I'm going to end the webinar right now, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, have a great night.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye.